This video is sponsored by Blinkist. Hey, Marcus House with you here, and hello there my friends. I know that most of you have heard of this little place called Starbase in Texas. Well, SpaceX is absolutely going full steam with upgrades, not just at the launch site, but everything at the build site that supports it. We have a potential 20% increase in the size of Starship's full stack. Yep, diving into that too. SpaceX prepares to launch into a courtroom battle with the FAA, the amazing Axiom 2 mission with much more Falcon 9 action through the week, and loads more. Let's get stuck into it.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
So the orbital launch mount at Starbase has been a continual spot for activity for weeks now, and again, this week was no exception. The aggressive orbital launch mount piling work kept on screaming along, increasing the number of pilings installed. Take this awesome shot from RGV aerial photography, for example, from almost perfectly above, showing this very well. Zooming right in here, you can see that there is a full ring of pilings being made right beneath. They've placed this ring in such a way that they actually need to retract individual hold down clamps and its mechanically attached Raptor booster quick disconnect. That was in order to give enough clearance for the cranes to lift in the rebar cage and the tremie pipe. Now, I suspect that once that ring has been finished, they might even add more pilings right in the centre. Once all of that is done, the water-cooled steel plate system sitting on top of these is certainly going to have the necessary needed support when pummeled with the incredible thrust from the 33 Raptor engines during liftoff. Just above, the launch mount itself also got plenty of attention. One of the many Raptor boost quick disconnects, or QDs, was being lifted back on after they took all of them off a few weeks ago. If we compare them side by side, we can see that they both have 4 main gas lines next to the piston pushing rod and the electrical cable. However, the new version seems to have an increased diameter in at least one of those pipes, I imagine in order to help with the increased reliability or speed with the Raptor startup. So the crews this week really started dismantling components to begin some pretty thorough inspections. One of the huge shielding pieces for the main booster quick disconnect was removed, and it was soon clear why, as they started to pull off a lot of the flexible cryogenic hoses going up towards it. Later here, it was all laying on the trailer waiting to be taken away. I think given the fact that one of these access hatches on the side of the hood was blasted off during the launch, I suspect that they wanted a very thorough look through everything on the inside of that hood. The removal of the vital equipment continued right above with the ship quick disconnect arm as well. Yep, there it goes, including its flex hoses. Now, that being removed was even less surprising given that unlike the booster QD, this one isn't shielded during the launch. I think the fact that huge chunks of concrete were seen flying up past the tower arms, there is a reasonable chance that something got hit here too. They may even decide to reinforce the arm with more shielding for future launches. I will say the amount of work that SpaceX has already accomplished in a little over a month after the launch is actually pretty darn staggering. It won't be ready in that 6 to 8 weeks that Musk had originally suggested though. No, late Friday, Elon's new updated estimate is about 2 months from now. Excitement too, because at the same time, SpaceX shared this brand new Starship flight test recap video. In particular, it was really nice to finally see this shot and then ending with the announcement that indeed the second flight test should be with Booster 9 and Ship 25, and the teams have absolutely swarmed over all of the upgrades needed like ants in a colony, doing not only repair work where the damage occurred, but simultaneous upgrades at the build site and then of course testing at Massey's. Speaking of which, the Ship 26.1 test tank underwent multiple cryo tests in the last week, even though we don't really know what the goal of those tests were. The water deluge hardware is still being assembled. Just like last week, more high-pressure tanks were lifted into place, and looking at those all next to each other, the potential pressure that they want to have to drive the water deluge system is going to be absolutely colossal, certainly a requirement to keep those steel plates from melting. Now, in the recent Twitter space, Elon had mentioned that the horizontal tanks, or the hot dog tanks as he called them at the time, would be bought in to replace at least some of their homemade vertical storage tanks. Well, it looks like the foundation work for some of this is already underway. Right next to these methane storage tanks, 2 wide strips of concrete were removed, and during the week, this blue continuous flight auger foundation rig was hard at work drilling the initial holes for the pilings. The big question is, what propellant is SpaceX planning to store here? I'm sure that we'll know from the tank labels when they are eventually delivered to the site. Over at the suborbital side of the launch site, Ship 25 remained sitting on Pad B, still preparing for that static fire. No news on when that will happen just yet. Nearby at Pad A though, the team are installing the necessary upgrades so that it too can eventually support ships for static fires. It's very neat to see a lot of the hydraulic thrust ram hardware right next to the pad here, but what is all this? Well, it looks like this space, out of the way of all the active construction, is to work on the required cryogenic piping for the orbital launch mount. So over at the build site, as always, it's a hive of activity. Ship 29 was lifted onto its middle liquid oxygen section, so once they've stacked it with its thrust section, that's going to be another ship body done. Ship 28, right next to it, was receiving its aft flaps this week, so once those are fully installed and all of the tiles are finished, that one should be ready for testing real soon. Booster 11's methane tank has been fully completed now, being stacked with its remaining 4-ring barrel. It also had the grid fins brought out this week, and they were swiftly installed one by one. Really great efficiency there by SpaceX actually. They simply kept the methane tank on the turntable and then rotated it slowly to install each of those 4 grid fins. Just to the side of that, it is time again, I think, to revisit the new megabay. Finally, the first layer is underway. Day by day, more pieces have been added as the speed of the construction accelerated on this huge structure. We had been tempted, of course, to give it the fitting nickname of White Bay, but, well, now it looks like it's not going to be white after all. The cladding for some of its sections for its second layer were added this week, and yeah, those are grey. On top of that, the crews were sent out with paint rollers and were actively painting those sections as well. It is in fact looking very similar in colour to the other bays. To help with the construction, SpaceX also brought in this. Great catch here by Alex, spotting some of these crane pieces on the move. That's right, these pieces here are from the very same crane that they previously built up over at the Roberts Road facility for the construction of that megabay, which is now of course in limbo. Now over here, the expansion of the Star Factory is coming along really nicely. Looks like we can now properly see all the footings for the first expansion laid out, and the teams have already started work on the concrete flooring. Elon even confirmed that the expansion is indeed going to be simply monstrous once finished. In fact, we've been seeing activity around these areas suggesting that SpaceX would clear it all out. Indeed, the Star Factory looks like it's going to extend all the way down to this entire area, whilst presumably keeping the existing 3 tents active here, at least for this step of the upgrades. Even the old low bay here isn't going to be saved. At this point in time, it doesn't really have any main purpose left anyway. Previously, it was used to integrate the nose cone and the payload bay barrel, which is now of course done in the high bay. Now this was kind of cool news. Midweek, Elon hinted that the upgraded Raptor 3s should be capable of lifting around 6,000 tonnes. Now last week I talked about expanding the ship by 10 metres or so, but 6,000 tonnes is roughly a total mass increase of 20% from 5,000. If you increase the rocket length itself by 20%, you are probably looking at extending both the ship and the booster by at least 20 metres together. If that's the case though, it's complicated because if the booster expands, the ship quick disconnect needs to move up. To then stack a ship on top of this booster, the lifting points would then need to be moved way down, so problematic no matter how you look at it. What about another less complicated thought though? What if a 6,000 tonne behemoth is actually a future tanker Starship almost completely filled with propellant? With a booster still at its regular height and just an extended ship, they could simply increase the main tank size within instead of having the regular payload bay. All of that combined with 6 Raptor vacuum engines, it seems possible to increase the wet mass of the ship by 1,000 tonnes or so. All in all, yet another head scratcher. Okay, so the story of the Federal Aviation Administration being sued over SpaceX's Starship flight test has taken an interesting turn. As reported early in the week by Michael Sheets, SpaceX is proposing to embark on a new critical mission, not to launch a rocket, but this time a battle in the courtroom. SpaceX have proposed that they join forces as fearless co-defendants with the FAA, a move to strike down the environmental lawsuit triggered by the literal groundbreaking maiden flight of the full-stack Starship. Although it wasn't surprising that the environmental groups took issue to the flight, I mean, they've fought SpaceX every step of the way for years here, SpaceX getting back to action to move forward again as soon as possible is absolutely critical. Fueling the fires of urgency, SpaceX CFO Brett Johnson warned that delays in Starship's timeline and future triumph could harm the company financially and disrupt the deployment of its Starlink satellite internet service. Now, in itself, this isn't really surprising as you would expect SpaceX to play a part here, but it should help more rapidly resolve this issue. With all of the upgrade work going on to ensure the same thing doesn't happen again, SpaceX is not just sitting by idly. Let's just remember the importance of this project. Once successful, it could put massive science experiments, satellite constellations, cargo, propellant, and space stations into orbit for much, much lower prices. Just like with early versions of Falcon 9, things won't always go to plan as they iterate and improve the process, but just like this, they will eventually nail it. Elon, I think, said it best a few years ago, if things aren't failing, you are not innovating. Now, just to commemorate that first attempt, you just can't go past this wonderful infographic put together and released this week by Tony Bela with the help of Lunar Caveman. Now, this is totally free to grab from the link below, so thanks for subscribing to these wonderful artists of the spaceflight community. It is only because of you that they can get their work out there, so thanks for supporting them. That helps a heap, just like it does right here. If you are a long-term subscriber here, by the way, do take a quick second to make sure that you are still subscribed. A bunch of comments the last few weeks saying that they've been unsubbed. Must be some sort of cleanup going on again. Okay, so I think we can safely say the most significant launch event of the week for SpaceX was this terrific scene from Kennedy Space Center. This time, the long-awaited Axiom 2 mission. The crew right there were all suited up and they drove out to the launch pad, there climbing in and getting cozy in SpaceX's Crew Dragon Freedom capsule. The Axiom 2 mission was all set for launch, taking the stand for this beautiful flight, a brand new Falcon 9 first stage. Here we have booster 1080 in this brilliant liftoff. Just pausing here, this is a nice perspective of the Starship Tower and the presumed liquid oxygen tank at Launch Complex 39A. So just place yourself into the Crew Dragon for a moment and imagine this acceleration. Every 100 kilometers per hour that you see ticking up, or 62 miles per hour, seems like pretty reasonable acceleration, right? Well, SpaceX intentionally throttled down the engines during max Q and after to limit the stresses on the vehicle. With Earth's gravity still pulling them down into their seat, they are probably experiencing only about 1.5 G here with that acceleration. Now, watch that speed increase as they throttle back up.
Out of the throttle button.
Just before main engine cutoff, they would be experiencing roughly 3G or so, a beautiful smooth acceleration during the flight, and then instantly 0G at stage separation. Now, at this point, the second stage being full is much less powerful to start off. We'll just leave the 4 crew to it as they slowly build those Gs back up again and follow the booster. About 5 minutes later, just have a look at this now. A really cool tracking shot of the booster coming down to land at landing zone 1 here. Now, what is interesting here is that this was the very first time that SpaceX has ever done a land landing with a crewed mission. The margin to do this has probably been there for quite a while, but due to the many Falcon 9 missions, reliability and optimizations of the rocket, they know that a return to launch site is now comfortably achievable with Crew Dragon. That, by the way, appears to now be planned for all future crewed missions to the ISS. Soon enough, the crew were coming up to second engine cutoff, and again, take note of that acceleration there, which looks to now be a little over 4G or so. Boom, back to 0G, and just look at the reaction of the crew there now that they are in orbit. Absolutely love that shot. So moments later, of course, the Dragon capsule separated to make its way to dock with the International Space Station. A great illuminated view there of it drifting away, and of course, about 15 hours later, we were back, this time with views from the ISS itself. This is the second mission for this Crew Dragon Freedom capsule, now making its second ever docking after its first mission with NASA's Crew 4 last year. This time though, at only around 15 hours after achieving orbit, the Crew Dragon capsule successfully docked, and it also became the fastest trip from launch to the ISS by SpaceX ever. No views of the docking this time sadly, but SpaceX did confirm that on Twitter. A great view this one of Crew Dragon docked there afterward. So the Axiom 2 crew there were greeted by Expedition 69. Ali Al-Khani and Rihanna Barnawi became the first astronauts from Saudi Arabia to visit the International Space Station ever, and also Rihanna became the first woman from Saudi Arabia in space. The first time in space for John Schaffner, the paying customer and the pilot of this mission, and last but certainly not least, Peggy Whitson. She is a retired NASA astronaut and well experienced. She was part of Expedition 5, Expedition 16, and amazingly, Expedition 50, 51, and 52. That's crazy. She has commanded the ISS twice. In fact, she holds the record for the longest amount of time spent in space by a woman, and she just became the oldest woman ever to orbit the Earth at age 63. What a legend. So the crew will be mad at work right now, primarily focusing on their research for Axiom space to perform over 20 experiments during the mission. So take a second to look at the entire crew here. Pretty darn packed up there now, isn't it, with 11 on board. Not only that, but there were 4 spaceships docked at this point in time, with a 5th spaceship soon on the way to replenish the Expedition 69 crew with new supplies and cargo. Yes, introducing the Progress MS-23 mission on Wednesday. The Soyuz here rolled out to the launch pad at Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, and on board around 2.5 tons of supplies for the station. Finally, it was off. Amazing shot there as always, showing the power of those boosters, and just shy of 2 minutes into the launch, there goes the booster jettison there with the very awesome Korolev cross. And just a short 3 hours later, there it was, Progress MS-23 docked to the Poisk module. The next big event, of course, for the ISS will be the return of the Axiom 2 crew. They're going to undock from the station after an 8-day mission, and that is actually going to be heading back home this coming week, deorbiting and splashing down off the coast of Florida. Now, just after releasing last Saturday's video, we had this interesting mission too. Falcon 9 booster 1063 standing here again after aborting the launch the previous day. This mission was loaded with not only OneWeb satellites, but also Iridium's next program satellites were also stacked within the fairings in this sweet looking rideshare mission. More on that in a moment, but first, a huge thanks to Blinkist for sponsoring this video. This is a really neat platform hosting a colossal library of around 5,500 non-fiction books and podcasts. Not the full copies though. No, here they've condensed the key concepts into about 15 minutes or so, and they simply call them blinks. Now, I can simply read or listen to a few of them as part of my morning routine, and I've come across a bunch of great stuff here. Think of them also as a great teaser to the full book. You know that you're going to enjoy it because you're now done with the blink. This morning I listened to Rocket Men, tomorrow An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield. This one here by Ashley Vance on Elon Musk was interesting years back when I read it, and with the blink, it's a nice refresher. They've even got a collection of Elon's book recommendations that I'm planning on listening through as well. And I'm sure that because of that, I'll be downloading some of the full books soon after. You might also be interested in this new feature called Blinkist Spaces. With that, you can create a space to add, manage, and share your recommended titles from the Blinkist library all in one place. It's pretty darn cool, and I can invite anyone to my Blinkist space, whether they're a premium member or not. And I can also create as many of those shared spaces as I need. Just for watching my video here, Blinkist is offering you 25% off their annual premium plan. Give it a try for free with their 7-day free trial and start your epic journey. Thanks Blinkist for sponsoring this week's video. The link is right there in the description box below to subscribe. So yes, this was the view from the start of the webcast. Yeah, Pretty misty footage of the liftoff this time around. That's kind of expected a lot of the time from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Once it cleared of that weather though, brilliant tracking shots of the rocket itself. This mission, believe it or not, is now the 9th SpaceX Iridium launch, with all of the previous ones occurring a long time ago, between January 2017 and January 2019. Over that time, SpaceX had delivered 75 of their satellites to low Earth orbit. The 5 satellites on board this mission are simply spares for that same constellation. It's a pretty big difference in size if we compare those to the OneWebs stacked below. There were 16 of those on board, 15 of them were Generation 1s, and a single Generation 2 test satellite. This one here in the top right is that test satellite, nicknamed JoeySat, and that is because it is set to test out beam hopping technologies. Now, the second stage of the Falcon 9 was what most people found interesting in this flight. This is the second time ever that we've seen this shorter nozzle. Previously, you may have seen this used on the Transporter 7 mission just a month or so ago. It looks kind of weird, doesn't it? Now, in some occasions like this mission, they are using these nozzles to reduce the launch cost, but that does come with a dip in the stage's performance. The full-sized big vacuum belts with their niobium and hafnium alloy are actually hugely expensive, and if SpaceX doesn't need the extra specific impulse, they can simply get away with these shorter ones on missions that don't require the full Falcon 9 performance. The deployment of these satellites were done in 2 separate sequences. The first, successfully deploying all 5 Iridium satellites, along with the first 6 of the OneWeb satellites. Sadly, we didn't get to see any of those deployments due to the coverage blackout, but we did get to see deployment action during the release of the final 10 OneWeb satellites, which included that JoeySat test satellite. So yes, another complex and flawless mission done and dusted, and if you thought that was it for Falcon 9 for the week, you'd be wrong, because the third launch of the week, can you believe, was with the Arabsat BADR-8 mission after a hold was called due to bad weather the day prior. The satellite inside the fairings here was made by Airbus for the Saudi-based Arab Satellite Communication Organisation. It was actually the first launch of their 7th generation satellite, and this is going to replace the existing BADR-7 satellite that was launched back in 2015 on the Ariane 5. Another glorious landing here too, 14 times now with this touchdown on the drone ship. Just read the instructions as the second stage achieved orbit there. Another burn later to place BADR-8 successfully into a geosynchronous transfer orbit, and then moments later deployment. Using Airbus's electric orbit raising technology, it's going to be now making its way slowly into the final position. Finally, some long-awaited action from Virgin Galactic early Thursday morning as they prepared for the Unity 25 mission. Yes, this was their first crewed flight in 2 years. The last one was Unity 22 when CEO Richard Branson was on board. This mission was a crewed test flight to validate the astronaut experience, with all the crew here being Virgin Galactic employees. The mothership, VMS Eve, took off with the VSS Unity craft attached from Spaceport America in New Mexico. About an hour in, Unity was released. Now, the only footage streaming was by NASA Spaceflight, but scenes of this did come later on Virgin Galactic's YouTube channel. Its rocket engine fired up and it was on its way to the edge of space. With the vehicle now travelling with a velocity about 3 times the speed of sound, it cut off its engine and started coasting the rest of the way, offering the crew those several minutes of weightlessness in near zero G. Beautiful views there, but it would have been great to see some of the live raw footage of this. Anyway, a big congratulations there, Virgin Galactic. With that successful test, they are now going to be working towards their very first commercial mission, Galactic 1, in the near future. Finally, we have Rocket Lab's Coming to a Storm Near You mission, which was the second of 2 Electron launches set to deploy NASA's TROPICS satellites completing this constellation. Just look at those views at liftoff. About 25 minutes after launch, Rocket Lab confirmed the successful deployment. Now, once the satellites place themselves into their designated position, they will join the 2 previously deployed earlier this month. Originally, it was intended to be a constellation of 6 satellites, but it was then reduced to the 4. The constellation will be equally spaced at an altitude of 550 kilometers, and they are here to provide frequent updates on hurricane and typhoon developments. So another week behind us, my friends, and what a week of action that was. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that subscribe to follow along. If you would like to help directly with what the team and I are doing here, all these options are incredibly helpful. We do have a brand new shirt design coming real soon too. If you want to continue the journey, the algorithm thinks that you will enjoy this video here, or maybe that video there. Thank you for watching all this way through, and I'll see you all in the next video.